My name is Isaac Aqua from the Innovation Spark, and today I have a fascinating story to tell you, going from advisory to acquisition with Pangea here in Ghana, powered by Blackstar Advisories, the acquisition of Eden Tree. Most people met Pangea the day of this acquisition was announced. What they didn't see was the years before it, an advisory relationship that turned into ownership and a completed exit for investors who'd been in the business for almost a decade. That path from advisory to owner, an African capital buying out a development finance fund, is rare enough to be worth understanding properly. And today, to share the story of the founders of Pangea, Tracy and John, thank you for doing this. Thank you for sharing and being here. And we'll just dive straight in. Firstly, who are Pangea? What is Pangea? Maybe Tracy, if you would take that.
Sure. Pangea, we are a advisory company first, but we look for promising SMEs in the ecosystem. We work in West Africa, and we look for strong growth, strong revenue, strong profits, and we help them get to the level where they need to be in order to find investments. And then we coordinate investment facilitation for them.
Okay, no, thank you. So, can you take us back to the first time you met Catherine, the owner and founder of Eden Tree? Where was Eden Tree at that point? Can you state kind of what the business was looking like? And
Sure.
what made you want to keep the conversation going?
Sure. We met Eden Tree through INP about a year ago. We were quite impressed with the organization. It was boosting food security. It was creating a market for smallholder farmers. It had strong revenues. And so we were very impressed with it. And we were trying to help INP exit. It became difficult to find an investor because of the type of transaction that it was. And probably towards the end of last year is when we thought that maybe this is something that we should invest in. And so we started sort of investigating and doing a deeper dive into the company itself. But we were very impressed with Catherine and her leadership and her team.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with Catherine in different dimensions. She's done a lot of things in the horticulture sector, which the Dutch is very strong in as well. But I know you've been seeing and advising a whole host of companies, not just in Ghana, but across other parts of Africa. But what was it about Catherine and Eden Tree that made you say, no, this is one we really want to invest in and dive deeper?
So our premise, our foundation is on food security. And Eden Tree was offering that. They were providing sort of they were filling the gap in the space where quality fruits and vegetables were available. And we gravitated towards that. That's our foundation.
Mm-hmm. And maybe John, as a technical advisor rather than investor, what were you doing on a week-to-week basis? And what were you kind of ready for growth capital? What does that kind of mean when you start engaging with these founders?
Yeah. Well, first, Isaac, thanks for having us today. And I just want to reemphasize what Tracy said, that for Pangea, it's really all about the SMEs and the people, the business founders, the management team. And indeed, Catherine is a great leader, an inspirational leader. And from day one, we saw her leadership potential. I mean, what she's done already over nearly 30 years with Eden Tree. And so it's such an inspiring story. And even the products, we knew them as customers of Eden Tree, as clients of Eden Tree, because we buy their products. They have great products. They're healthy products. They're fresh products. They're high quality products, reliable quality. And today, especially when we look at the risks that are there in consuming fresh fruits and vegetables, everyone knows that Eden Tree is quality. And so that's really the starting point in our exposure to Eden Tree. But then when we met Catherine, as just about anyone who meets Catherine can see, she's an inspiration. And so that's really going back to the starting point, as Catherine represents also many other SMEs that are very inspiring, that are doing great work. And that's really what Pangea is about. But to talk about the advisory work and the day-to-day work, I mean, it starts with building relationship. It starts with building trust. It starts with really getting to know the company and what makes what's the company about? What do they aspire to? What does the leadership aspire to? And not just the founder or the CEO, but the leadership team. And I think, again, Eden Tree really represents the strength of a leadership team that Catherine has built over 30 years. Women, young people that are contributing to the growth and success of Eden Tree. So getting to know the team and understanding what their vision is, and then looking at what they need. What are their needs for growth? Because from our perspective, we as listeners and learners in this space, we want to understand really what they need to enable them to grow, to enable them to generate more impact. So that's really the starting point. And then once we look at what they need, we can begin to contribute to help them become investment ready. We like to say we work with companies that are investable, but may not be quite investment ready. And what does that mean? A lot of it's about the documentation and the way they communicate with an investor to be attractive to that investor. And so we like to say our work is made easy by choosing the right companies, choosing the companies that are investable. They have all the elements there, and we just need to help them get to the finish line by helping prepare some of their documents, helping prepare a deal room, and helping communicate effectively to the right investors. And we'll get more into that conversation, I'm sure.
No, I mean, thank you, John. And I think, you said making them investable. I guess, like companies can look very good on the outside, strong leader, been in the system for a long time. They have the great products. But sometimes, I guess, once you get to look for them on the inside, it looks different. What maybe one or two things that were challenging that really needed work at the beginning? And how honest could you be with Catherine at that time about, how far they were and what work was needed to get them the investment?
To be honest, very little was challenging in this transaction. The challenging part, which I'm sure we'll talk about also, is that it's a secondary transaction and that it needed an exit of an existing investor. That was the big challenge for us in this transaction. And as an advisor, we worked really hard getting to know Eden Tree and getting to know their growth potential, their impact. And it's a very attractive company. And we were quite frustrated that such an attractive company would not be able to actually get a deal or get a term sheet from an investor. And it's largely because of this issue of a secondary transaction. If there's anything that became a bit of a challenge, it was perhaps land documentation. So that's a challenge. I think all Ghanaians are familiar with the challenges related to lands commission and documentation of land. And it's part of the asset of Eden Tree. And of course, those things have to be buttoned up. And in the due diligence process, that became one thing that wasn't quite buttoned up. It was very close. There were really no major obstacles, but the process is very difficult, as many of your listeners know even better than we do. We've learned a lot through this transaction about the documentation for the land to perfect the land so it can be used as collateral in future transactions.
Yeah. And Tracy, back to you. So when did this, looking back, when did this stop being advisory and start being something that you guys actually wanted to own? And was it a specific number or conversation or moment that made you switch?
That's a great question. Since we began talks with IMP last year, it was probably towards the end of last year that we really started to take a closer look and see the enormous potential that was there, the potential for growth outside of the region, the potential to further enhance the filling the food security gap, and further enhance the reach and job security that we can create working with smallholder farmers and opening markets to them. So we once we started down that road and we said, wow, this is a great company, we didn't look back.
Okay. So, I mean, looking now at the acquisition, right? We here at the Ghana Investment Journal have reported about it, and it's been making news rounds, and people look at an acquisition as almost a single event. but it's really like a lot of different events. There's a whole kind of timeline from the first advisory to then the actual signing and money coming across. Could you just walk us a little bit through where the time actually went? Like, what were some of the major milestones in that period, from meeting IMP to now owning Eden Tree?
I'll take that one, Isaac.
Yeah.
First, a word on advisory, because that's still our core business, and it's great business because we get to work with SMEs every day, and we have a team. Let me also emphasize that really this represents the work of a team, a growing team, a very strong Ghanaian team that has done a lot of this work. And so people like Bridget Agbanya, I can give a shout out to one of our team members that did a lot of the advisory work for us and helped recognize how attractive this company was and how attractive it would be to investors. And in fact, it was attractive to investors. And this is what, when we made that decision in around October of last year, let's figure out how we can actually invest in this company as opposed to finding another investor. It was due to the frustration of being an advisor. And as an advisor, there's a lot of discussion we're having these days about what it takes to be an advisor. And one thing is, how do you get paid for this work? And one of the challenges we face is a lot of the work today is free of charge. It's a lot driven by NGOs and donor projects, and it's not always getting companies to the finish line. And so we believe that there has to be a marketplace for these services, an affordable marketplace for these services. And Pangea is really an innovator in aiming to provide affordable and effective advisory services that deliver results. And so when we took Eden Tree as a client with Catherine and with IMP, we felt like this is a great assignment because the company is so attractive as we got to know them. But what we found was, after speaking to probably more than 100 investors, we couldn't find the right fit. And again, going back to this idea of secondary transactions, and very few impact investors are able to do secondary transactions. So that's where we said, let's figure out how we can do this ourselves in October 2025, and that's where Blackstar Africa came into the conversation. But then getting to your question about the transaction itself and demystifying the transaction, it's really just about buying an asset, buying shares, and just like you'd buy anything, you look at the value of what you're buying and you speak to the person who's selling it. In this case, because it's a secondary transaction, that's when INP, Investisseur Partenaire, came into the picture, and we began discussing, okay, we're actually going to end our role as advisor. We had pretty much completed that assignment in terms of the duration, but we're now going to transition to be an acquirer of these shares. And so when that conversation happened, then we began discussing with the INP, how do we do this? What does it look like? Of course, we engaged further with Catherine on it as well. But the whole idea is that we're bringing fresh and permanent capital to this company as opposed to the patient capital that INP had brought 10 years ago.
Okay. I mean, a question for the both of you. Which milestone in this whole journey was the hardest one? I mean, John, we'll start with you, then come to Tracy. Like, do you remember a milestone that made you think, okay, we can't get further than this, we've done everything we can?
Yeah, I mean, if we talked about the steps, we talked about the starting point, learning, building trust, and then the advisory part, looking at their deal room, their pitch deck, their policies, and then beginning to, doing some further analysis. For example, the financial model. That's always a part of what Pangea does, is looking at their financial model. What are their growth projections, and are they reasonable? And as I said, all of this was great. I mean, it was not, I wouldn't say difficult. It was easier than usual, even because Catherine's great work with Eden Tree.
Yeah.
The hard part was the investor engagement. And it wasn't hard to engage the investors because Pangea has, fortunately, one of our assets is we have a great database of investors and good relationships with those investors. So when we send an email, when we pick up the phone and call an investor, they know that they're going to have a conversation about an interesting company. And so without a problem, we engaged 100 plus investors. But
Wow.
all of them came to say, we can't do it. It's not in our mandate. Or we can't do it. It's too small. And so that's the hard part. And that was quite frustrating because we saw how attractive it was. But fortunately, the end of the story now, we know it, is that it turned into this great deal. That's such an important milestone for us.
Yeah. And Tracy, so you're currently on mute. Okay. Yeah.
These new systems, these high-tech systems you all have here. But I would echo what John said. We started the engagement early, and we sent lots and lots of messages, had it on our newsletter to investors, and had lots of conversations. And so that was challenging. But I would also add a little bit of a tricky part is kind of understanding the transition itself. So how we communicate it to staff, how we keep staff engaged so that it didn't disrupt the business itself. And so I would say that that was a challenge that we've been able to navigate quite well with Blackstar.
No, thank you. And sticking with you, Tracy, I mean, a lot of people who start talking to investors always talk about, they're getting serious, we're having good talks, but sometimes things go a bit quiet. And I'm guessing that's also happened in your case. What were you still doing in those quiet times? I'm guessing there were still things happening. I see you smiling.
That's a great question. Quiet times require you to shift a little bit. And so we did shift, maybe the type of investors that we were approaching, maybe we needed to shift that a little bit. So we did. But also, again, in those quiet times is when we were saying, well, what else can we do? And that's when we came up with the idea of, well, maybe this is an asset for us to acquire, for us to move forward with and enhance some of the impact metrics that we've always found to be important in the companies that we work with. And there was tremendous potential there working with Eden Tree to grow some of those impact metrics that we wanted to enhance in the ecosystem.
No, thank you. And I mean, coming back to the both of you, John, you mentioned this number of 100 different investors that you've reached out to. And this is with you guys being in the game, in the field for a long time, trusted track record. And I just want to stress this one time, but I talked to a lot of startups, as you can imagine, and they're telling me, but no, I've reached out to 10, I've reached out to 20, nobody wants to invest. And they kind of stop there. I mean, what made you think after the 50th investor to keep going, and how important is it to have that grit and just keep going?
Right. Well, to address your comment about the quiet times, there really are no quiet times. There's a buzz. For those that have been to our office here, I mean, the office is buzzing every day. It's really a fun place to work. The laughter that's here, the team we have is just an amazing team, and we're always joking around. But the people are hard at work engaging investors, and the persistence of our team is clear. Well, we were motivated by the excitement of this transaction, and once we began to see, our opportunities or the targets were running low, we started looking at those who are specifically involved in acquisitions. And so there are a lot of investors that do acquisitions, but they're all larger. No one is doing very, very few are doing SME acquisitions. They're looking at much larger ticket sizes. And so the ticket size is really clear. I mean, that's a real impediment. And to say there are still gaps in the impact investing ecosystem, it's a very exciting time because impact investing assets under management are growing every year. Mm-hmm. And we see, even here in the Ghana ecosystem, there's so much excitement happening with Chigaba and the fund of funds that's really recently been created, with the MasterCard Africa Growth Fund that's supporting the creation of new funds, even with commercial banks. Pangea actually has a contract with Stanbic Bank under the Bridge and Ag program, and the banks are very intentionally looking for SME deal flow with this support from MasterCard Foundation. So there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of excitement, but there are still gaps in the system, and this secondary transaction is one of the gaps. And I'll also say this is where Blackstar Africa comes in, because as we were advising and looking at investing ourselves, that's when we met Blackstar Africa. And I still remember the day that I met with Grant. It was actually at a GIZ supported event called Develop PPP. Actually, your sister was Hannah was involved in that event, and so I met. It's a small world here in some ways, but I met Grant and talked about how excited we were about EdenTree, but we couldn't find an investor. And he said, "I'd love to learn more about this." And literally, and Grant will tell the story. The day I sent him the deck and he looked it over, he said, "We have to do this. Let's do this together." And then since then, there's never been a quiet day, and between that day in October until now, I'm trying to get this deal done. I mean, a lot of complexities. We knew it would get done eventually, but that from October until now, we've been figuring out what can we do to get this done. Because again, despite the excitement and the ecosystem of impact investing, there are still gaps. And if we can find a way to help fill those gaps, we're going to do it.
No, that's amazing. I'm actually just thinking we should have another call with Catherine and Blackstar on later as well, just like sharing how things are. But let's get into understanding the deal. I know a lot of people are business savvy and tech savvy, but for people who have never heard of the term, things like term sheet, can you help me kind of demystify what's really happening here? You mentioned IMP, so they were investors into this company of EdenTree. So now kind of who owns what and what has changed for Catherine? What's the shareholding of this company now? So Tracy, I don't know if you want to start with this.
I'll let John start with this.
Okay.
Sure. Well, just to demystify, I think a lot of people, ourselves included, are really learning about what it takes to get a deal done. And there's a lot of learning to be done, but fortunately, there are a lot of great resources out there. And we'll name a few. But the deal itself, I mean, this is a secondary transaction, as we say, which means we're buying shares from another investor. And let me just say a word about Investisseur Partenaire here. They are a pioneering investor. They've done so much in the ecosystem throughout West Africa in particular, which really is one of the motivations of Pangea, because West Africa tends to be underserved by impact investors. We see a lot of deal flow in East Africa, much less in Ghana. I mean, Nigeria is clearly one of the leaders, but when you look at Ghana in particular, and then a lot of the rest of West Africa, very, very little international deal flow. Fortunately, there are a lot of great domestic investors, but when you look at the international impact investors, much less. But IMP is an amazing pioneer. What they've done over the last, I think, 20 years in West Africa, and not only in Ghana, but in Senegal and Burkina Faso, in Niger and Mali, and even in Guinea. We have new activities in Guinea, and IMP is there and has collaborated with us. So IMP is a patient investor, and they invested 10 years ago. And the way that we like to phrase it is, they're a patient investor. They came in 10 years ago. We're a permanent investor. So we've come in with permanent capital. We don't need to exit down the road. We've come in with our resources to be a part of this company for the long haul. In terms of the term sheet, that is, it's not as complex as people think, although there is a lot of work that happens to get to the term sheet. What are the terms of the deal? Just like a contract for something you might buy, you define what's part of this purchase, and so and how much are we buying for it, and when do we pay for it, and all the details of the terms of the agreement to purchase the shares. And so, in this case, there's go ahead.
So without touching on anything confidential, okay, can you just give us kind of a high level, like how does it get stitched together, right? Because you have this patient capital that's been there, you have this founder, I don't know if you have other investors, other shareholders. You're now coming in with some Blackstar money. Yeah, I'm guessing IMP obviously got bought out. So what had to be put together to make this happen?
Well, there is some complexity here because there are essentially three shareholders of EdenTree before we came in. there's INP, there's the founder, Catherine, and then the one additional, we could call them a friends and family investor that was involved in the transaction. I wouldn't call this a buyout. I don't know how the term is used by others, but it's a secondary transaction that principally we were buying Investisseur Partenaires shares. Although we didn't buy all of them yet, we bought most of them, and they're still they have a still shareholding, a sliver of shares, and they're still on the board. So they haven't entirely exited yet, nor has Catherine. Catherine remains on the board. She remains a shareholder, and we're very excited about having Catherine as part of our team. So yeah, it's a bit complex. The other investor, that third party, we have acquired all of their shares now, so they're no longer part. But Catherine remains part of the company, and we hold Blackstar and Pangea own shares, as well as that sliver by INP and Catherine's shareholding.
Okay, so it's not a full buyout. You keep mentioning it's a secondary kind of acquisition or exit for the initial investors, and you keep mentioning kind of permanent capital. So it's a kind of capital which we use for growth, I guess, and then scaling what EdenTree is doing and bringing, I guess, some efficiency, some new products. And am I understanding that right?
Well, in permanent, what we mean is we don't have to exit. We never will exit, maybe, or maybe we will down the road. But an investor like INP has a timeline, and it's natural.
Okay.
And this is what VC, typically does, or an equity investor comes in for some period. They have their investors, and then they return profits to the investors. In this case, 7 or it's been 10 years since they invested down the road when their fund is closing, and so they need to exit. And we know those exits are difficult, as I said earlier, especially for medium-sized companies. So INP is making these bets, and the opportunity to exit is difficult, and that's where we come in. And I believe there is a need for more of these secondary transactions. We had another company in our office yesterday, not yet a client or partner, but we likely will work with them in acquiring shares from another company. But so it's a gap in the market, and we fulfill that. And that's what I mean by permanent capital. Now from here, we need to go further because EdenTree will need more capital. Clearly, we have visions for the company. We want to invest in cold storage, for example. We want to invest more in farmers. Farmers are really the key to this operation. When the farmers succeed, when the farmers increase their yields and their productivity, it will be a benefit to EdenTree, and it will generate impact. So we need to raise more capital. We're doing that now. We have very exciting prospects. So you're going to hear more about transactions with EdenTree in the very near future. This is just the beginning.
No, great to hear. But then speaking of exits, as you mentioned, few and far apart, you have investors like INP that are making bets, as you like to call it, for almost 20 years. How important almost is this deal to show that it is possible to have exits for these early stage investors and show that there are promising companies in Ghana and other parts of West Africa for more investors to pump money into? Tracy, if you want to come in here.
Sure, I'll just start very small, and John can add on. But it's so important because it's showing that Africa is investable and that companies are succeeding. They're able to succeed, they're able to grow, they're able to scale. So capital needs to come into the market. And so this is a huge win. It's garnered a lot of attention, which we are so grateful for, but it's warranted.
I'll just echo what Tracy said, that it's true that exits are notoriously difficult, but they are possible. And this is one of what maybe will be many such exits in the future. I think anyone that's hearing this podcast and anyone's read about this transaction will see it is possible. And investors like INP who come in can safely exit some years down the road. And there's a need for more of these. And hopefully there'll be others like us who say, this is an opportunity. We want to do more of these, and not just for the bigger companies, but for the smaller ones too. So for us, it's a signal, and it shows to both local and global investors that Ghana has institutional grade investments, very attractive investments, and all that money that's flowing to Kenya or South Africa or Egypt or Nigeria can and should be coming to Ghana. And I think what's happening in the ecosystem today, I mean, those who are here know it. There's just the opportunities are growing, there's stability. The government is making enormous efforts to make Ghana a destination for investors. And this is just one of what no doubt will be many, many investments that show that Ghana is a very attractive investment destination.
So in case you hadn't known before, now you know, coming directly from Tracy and John. If you're just joining us, we're talking about building Africa's future. Here in Ghana, Pangea Africa and Blackstar Group had an acquisition of Eden Tree, a SME that's been in the food business for close to 20 years, doing great things with food security, nutrition safety, working with farmers, putting great products on our shelves. I'm here with Isaac Aqua from the Innovation Spark, and I now want to shift and focus on a very key part, the money matter, financing the acquisition. We're talking about this acquisition. We're talking about now this is a secondary sale of buying some of the investors out. Catherine's still there, IMP still a sliver, but permanent capital, as you said, is now on the table. Where did this money come from? I mean, does Pangea actually hold a fund? Once again, I've engaged Pangea before as an advisory company. So how is this shift? And let's follow the money. Where did it come from, and how does it now sit in Eden Tree?
Right. Well, Pangea is not a fund. We are a permanent capital vehicle, we can say. You might call it a holding company. And in some ways, you could call it an angel investor, in that we're looking at these small and medium-sized deals that otherwise wouldn't get done. We're not focused on startups. Particularly, we're looking for traction, as we said earlier, companies that have proven they can execute, like Catherine, who's been doing it for 30 years. Not necessarily they have to be doing it for 30 years, but we're looking at that. But I'll say Blackstar Africa is a very important part of this, and they have a similar philosophy. In fact, we're learning from them as they do it. They've already made such transactions as a holding company, and they have their partners, as we have our partners that are bringing funds to Pangea to make these investments. So yeah, it's not a fund. We don't have that institutional infrastructure of a fund. We're more like a holding company, and this is our first real transaction of this nature. So we do intend to do more. We see the enormous opportunity, including of the partners that we have that have seen the enormous opportunity here in Ghana and in impact investing in the space of SMEs in the food and agriculture space. And so I think this establishes us as one of the leaders in the space, and we see that there are other investors that will come alongside us that will be partners of Pangea to make these investments. We're operational. We have these relationships. We're trusted here. And so I think we're a right kind of instrument that's innovative in the system, not a fund, but basically a permanent capital vehicle.
Okay. No, thank you for that. So Tracy, when a business lands on your desk, what are the first three things you look at? And do you have one red flag that makes it an instant no?
So we ask a few questions. We ask if the business is profitable. We want to see if they've been generating revenues over a period of time. And as we were just talking about, it doesn't have to be 30 years, but at least a good 4 or 5 years if they've been generating some revenue. We look at their leadership. Is their leadership trustworthy? Are they a hard worker? Are they innovative? Are they able to guide their team in a way that's compelling and will contribute to stability for the organization? And we also look for impact. So that's a big part of our work, looking at what type of impact are they making in the ecosystem? What type of impact can we then point to investors? Because that's a very important metric that investors want to see. And then lastly, we we have a soft spot for women. Women are in the ecosystem are very strong business leaders, like Catherine. They tend to generate revenue very successfully. They tend to pay their debts very successfully. So that's another metric. So those are really 4 basic questions. Of course, we ask a litany of other questions, but those are pretty big ones to see if we want to dive deeper into the organization.
So, as you know, the Ghana Investment Journal will be sharing this across. There may be a female founder or another SME founder who is like, okay, this sounds like me. I've been in the game for a long time. I'm profitable. I'm moving things forward. I have a good structure. My books are in order. What would make you pick up the phone if they call you? And I guess equally as useful, what will make you put the phone back down?
That's a good question. So again, we want to look for this profit, and if this business is quite successful, and then we want to have a conversation with the founder and see, sort of what drives the leader, what drives them. Is it true impact? Is it true filling the void of the scarcity of food in the ecosystem? We really want to get to know them well and see what type of leader they are. Why would we hang up the phone? Well, there have been a number of occasions where we've noticed that there was fraud or less desirable things happening in companies, and so that's a very quick end to the discussion.
Creative accounting.
Yes, exactly.
No, okay. And
I'll add something, Isaac, in that we almost always pick up the phone because we're just always eager to learn from what's out there and what SMEs are doing. We do put it down often, as Tracy said, because we might not find something about the company attractive, but even more often, and this is really important to the ecosystem, even more often, we just can only do so much as a small business ourselves. And I want to just say we're grateful for the ecosystem here in Ghana, and there's a robust ecosystem and a growing ecosystem of partners that do work with the private sector. We're frankly a small one right now, and we only have so much resources in our in our bank account to be able to pre-finance this work. And in fact, we almost always have to pre-finance it to an extent because we don't think SMEs should pay upfront for these services. We really want to work largely on success fee or get paid after the transaction gets done because we have confidence that it will get done. But what that means is we can only do so much at one time. Fortunately, we do have partners that help us get this work done. And there's a lot of discussion, as I was saying earlier, in the ecosystem about how we can support more companies and we can have development partners contribute to the work that we're doing. And I'll give a shout out in particular to the Ghana Investment Support Program that's been a great partner since our early days in working with the team there. David Tete, who's actually recently left, and we did a lot of work with him and with Tony Anderson and now with Mirabella Moreau, who's leading the team there, but an excellent partner in the ecosystem, helping what some would call market building, building a pipeline. And that's really important in the space, but it takes money. And unfortunately, a lot of the work that's been done in market building is not really building that quality pipeline. I won't get into the negatives too much, but we really need to make sure that market building funding is getting to building quality pipeline that results in deal flow. And so that's a limiting factor for us.
No, I fully agree with you there, and it's great to see more of these programs that are doing that capacity building. And so yes, thank you for shouting out for David Tete has done, and you mentioned some other names earlier like CI GABA and the Venture Capital Trust Fund, the Venture Capital Association. So like there's some things really pulling the community together, right? And it takes a whole ecosystem to invest in a company. But one of the big things when it comes to investing is due diligence. And that's often where a lot of things end because of the amount of work that is needed. And I guess also things that you uncover. And maybe can you kind of walk us through what you and your team, where you spend your hours? Because as you mentioned, you've been buying Eden Tree, you know them. Kathleen's not just been in the game for a short time, it was 20 years. But where were the hours spent in the due diligence? Where were the surprises, both the good ones and the honest challenges that you encountered?
This transaction had an easy due diligence process. Why? Because INP had been there for 10 years and had not only done their deep diligence when they made the transaction, but also had been part of the board and had assured that Eden Tree was satisfying all their legal requirements and doing everything right, really. So as I said earlier, it was a very attractive company, and INP's presence made it much easier to do diligence. On the advisory side, we don't really do diligence. That's left to the investor. So we do screening, and we do, as Tracy mentioned, we want to choose great companies because our name is on it. When we go to an investor, when we go to Claire Mondial or MCE Social Finance or ELEA, or many of the other investors that we go to, as I said, they pick up the phone because they know the company is strong. And so we do screening. We do a lot of analysis. We build a relationship and trust and understand what makes the company tick and what makes it a good fit for a given investor. And so that screening process, it goes back to the team and the buzz that we have in our office and people like Bridget and Lovinger and Georgia and Amma and the whole team that is really spending a lot of time with these companies and getting to know what they're all about and looking at their financial statements, looking at their customers and their contracts. So that's our screening process, which we typically do with our advisory side. And it's important and it's time consuming because we want to make sure that we choose the very best companies. I mean, there are tens of thousands of companies in Ghana. And as we said, we can only do a few at a time. So making that choice is very important. But in the case of diligence for Eden Tree, there's not a lot to say because it was really made easy by the INP presence in the company. If anything, that land element was the hardest part of it, and we were able to find a solution to that.
Okay, well, then I mean, I guess it shows maybe why secondary kind of purchases might be easier because a lot of the screening has already been done, and them being on the board also helps account for things. But Tracy, I mean, were there any risks at all that some red or maybe orange flags that you were spotting that made you think maybe we shouldn't quite go just yet to the investors, or how did you get comfortable saying, okay, this one we can go, full hand on heart. I know this is worth talking to our key investors about.
Sure. And I just want to go back to the previous statement on the team and the work that they do and some of these companies in our screening process. We also do site visits, which is a very important aspect to our work. We want to know that these companies are who they say they are, and they are producing what they say they're producing on the land they say they have, as we know that's a challenge again in Ghana. But that's a very important part of the work here and us being here with our team. But again, I want to emphasize there really weren't any red or orange flags in this process. I mean, it did take several months for us to have the time to go through in detail all of the records and meet the team and have these conversations with INP and Catherine and Blackstar. So we really were quite confident. And this was, as John had mentioned, it's the first deal of its kind for us. And it was quite straightforward and easy to do because there weren't any hesitation on our part.
No, amazing. But maybe just staying with you, Tracy, I mean, you mentioned doing business in Ghana. I wonder, were there some things about maybe kind of informal arrangements, informal agreements? You're also working with farmers. So, sometimes not everything is a written contract. Some things are paid with cash. Anything there that you have to look at or understand before moving forward?
Well, I I will leave that question to John, as he has a lot more experience working in Africa with the informal. But John, do you want to take that?
One of the challenges that many SMEs face is supply, the supply of products, especially in the food and agriculture space. Where's the raw product coming from? Can they get it consistently? Can they get it at the right quality and quantity? And this is a challenge that EdenTree clearly faces, as do just about every agribusiness in the space. And so that's something we looked at carefully. Fortunately, the team at EdenTree does have great relationships with over 100 farmers from which they get their products. They also have some products that are imported. And this is where I think it's both a challenge and an opportunity. And let's just look at onion. We've talked about onion at Pangea quite a lot internally. Onion throughout West Africa is grown locally. In fact, in northern Ghana, it's a great environment for growing onions. The yields are very high. They're competitive with the best Dutch growers, which are the best in the world, because the soil and the rainfall is adapted to growing onions. But we don't grow enough of them. We import enormous volume of onions. I have it on our LinkedIn somewhere. I can't give you the number, but probably about 50% of all the onions we consume. Of course, we eat onions in every meal. And so we have to import a lot of onions a lot of it's from the Netherlands. Now, we should be able to grow more onions here. And the reason we don't grow more is the lack of investment. I would say that's the challenge that we face, is farmers don't have sufficient capital to invest in the quality of production, the quantity of production, the irrigation that's needed, the fertilizer that's needed, the quality seed that's needed to produce onions at the right quantity that's needed. And so it's a challenge, and it's one of the things that EdenTree struggles with, and we're getting into that now with Grant and Catherine. How can we ensure the reliable quantity of produce at the time we need it? And the key is farmers, and working with farmers, working in, we call them farmer-allied relationships with farmers, so that farmers are also benefiting because they have a stable, fair price, good market for their products. They know they can sell to EdenTree, and we'll continue to develop those relationships. Catherine has them there, the EdenTree team has them already, but we need to improve upon that. We need more farmers. We need things like more cash payments. I mean, it's one of the challenges, because farmers want cash. Oftentimes, the system would have them paid 30 days later. We need to figure out creative ways to make sure farmers are satisfied with what they're getting for their product, but also they're able to invest in their farms with things like quality seed and irrigation.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for that. I mean, no, we've talked numbers, we've talked due diligence, we've talked about the big picture, but actually now I want to actually look at Catherine, who's really central to all of this. Over 20 years of building this business. And now, as you're saying, she's still going to be involved on the board, but stepping away from this active CEO role. That's not just a change of title. That's a whole emotional shift of what was and is her life's work. How are the conversations around that, and how is that transition happening? I don't know, Tracy, I see you nodding. I don't know if you want to take this or. Sure.
Of course, that's a huge, huge challenge. Like you said, it's her life's work. And in some conversations, she joked with us that was her baby, her third child.
Yeah.
And we had to handle it as such. We had to handle it carefully and work with her so that we could care for her third child in a way that she would. And we want to help see that third child grow. So it was a lot of conversations, a lot of prayer, a lot of patience, but we were able to get there. And Catherine was satisfied, and she was quite grateful that we were able to take her third child and be able to help it grow and facilitate that growth for her.
Yeah, and the rest of the senior team at EdenTree, how's this transition been for them? Because I know it's When I'm talking about money, but we're also talking about the human capital that makes this work.
Sure.
How are they taking
Transitions
it? And what's the traditions?
Yeah. Transitions are always very challenging. It's very difficult. And I've dealt with a lot of transitions in the US. This is my first transition in Africa, but the elements are all the same, right? You want to make sure that there's trust there. You want to make sure that there's good sound communication around what's happening, and you want it to be phased. You can't, it can't be just a sort of a dump everything out, because then you lose a lot of institutional knowledge. You lose a lot of good and great employees. And so we wanted to make sure that we went in with a plan, that we communicated the plan, and that we were able to help the staff with this transition. And part of this transition is, of course, keeping Catherine on, because she is the engine to Eden Tree and what it's been, and she will help us to move it into the next phase. So it's challenging and it's a little tricky, but we know, and with Blackstar Africa, of course, this is their specialty and their expertise, and so they were able to come in with us and help move this transition smoothly.
I mean, perfect timing for my next question. Blackstar coming in, also with Pangea as well. There's always this talk that investors say we're bringing more than just money. How does it actually look like in this case? Like, what is the more than money part that both Blackstar and Pangea bring on board? And did you start, Tracy? And I'll come to John as well.
Sure. So we're bringing technical expertise. We want to, and I'll let John expand on this a little bit more, but we want to automate a lot of things. We want to enhance some of the relationships that have already been existing and bring in new ideas in terms of, John had mentioned smallholder farmers. So we want to bring that element in. But we want to continue to see the staff happy. John, do you want to sort of elaborate on some of the pieces that we want to enhance?
Sure. Blackstar Africa is our partner here, and is under the leadership of Grant Weber, who is now, he's an operator. We're bringing operational expertise, management expertise, and Grant has a lot of that. He's been around. He's been, although he's of South African origin, he's been in Ghana for I think almost 2 decades now, and so he understands the context here. But he brings a lot of the technology that as Tracy had mentioned. Use of technology, even use of AI, for example, for forecasting. We want to be able to forecast what quantity of lettuce will be needed on the shelves of Melcom and Maxmart over the next 3 months. So Grant he brings a lot of technical expertise in that regard. We will pursue new markets, not only fresh fruits, but also processed fruits, for example, dried foods, dried spices, and perhaps even export markets. We'll look beyond the Ghanaian market. Now, first of all, the Ghanaian market is huge, and we need to serve Ghanaians with affordable, healthy foods. And Grant, with a drive for efficiency as well, will help us to serve more Ghanaians with affordable, healthy foods. Now, I diverge for just a moment here to talk about the cost of healthy diet. This has been in the news lately because the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations has come out recently with their annual State of Global Food Security. And the cost of a healthy diet is unreachable for, I believe it's 72% of West Africans, and for Ghanaians, it's close to that. 72% cannot afford a healthy diet. Every child, every adult needs to eat cabbage, carrots, lettuce, tomatoes, and it's very expensive. Everyone knows that, but it doesn't have to be. We can drive the cost reduction by having efficiencies in this space and bringing things like cold chain to the market so that the food losses can be reduced. And so bringing down the cost of a healthy diet, it doesn't have to be through the UN agencies or the NGOs and programs and training. The private sector can deliver healthy food and help drive. In fact, I would argue that the only way to make a cost of a healthy diet more reachable for Ghanaians and for West Africans is through investment in the private sector. And so sadly, we see these indicators. I mean, I think we have to admit that the international community has failed when we talk about food security, when we talk about nutrition and cost of healthy diet. And the reason why, and this is part of going back to the reason why we created Pangea some years ago, is that we believe the private sector is the only way to drive food security, to drive nutrition. And Eden Tree is a perfect example of that, because as we become more efficient, as we work with farmers to increase their yields, to reduce losses, to make efficiency in the delivery from the farm to the shelves of the market, or to the market seller in the marketplace, we're going to make healthy diet more affordable. And so that's a little bit about what we bring on the impact side under Grant's leadership, the management capabilities. Catherine is an incredible pioneering leader, but now we have to bring it to a new level. And she herself, and we had a meeting yesterday, and she said, John, I'm BBC. I never heard that term before.
Another term.
So she's not super tech savvy, but that's part of what Grant will bring to this, is bringing technology, whether it's using AI for forecasting or solar powered irrigation, for example. I mean, farmers, we can't rely on one rainy season a year to grow vegetables. We need irrigation. I think the government has stated that loud and clear, but that needs investment. And so Eden Tree, with our new ownership, will help bring investment so we can bring more irrigation to farmers so that they have what they need to produce cost effectively fruits and vegetables, and we can put them in the marketplace.
No, I mean, thank you for that. Very, very comprehensive. And I mean, you kept touching on cooling, I mean, across the whole interview. Do you have a number of how much produce is lost just because of either inefficient market, you can't get from the farm to Eden Tree or to the market on time, or because of lack of cooling? And if you have a number or an estimate, what does that mean to the farmer and for Eden Tree as a business, that loss?
Loss is waste. Loss is expense. The estimates are very shocking. With fresh foods like lettuce and cabbage and peppers, the losses are considered often over 50% between when they're grown in the farm and what makes it to the table. So 50%.
I just want to make sure I heard it right. Sorry, was it 5% or 50? Half.
50.
Wow.
Now, Isaac, even things like certain grains, like take cowpea, for example. We know cowpea is vulnerable to pest attacks. Even cowpea losses are estimated at 30%. So the losses are a big challenge for Africa. And going back to the cost of healthy diet, we need to target loss reductions. We need to reduce waste. We need efficiency in transportation. Now, maybe going back to your yellow flags, I mean, this is something many investors say infrastructure makes it difficult to invest. Well, it's true. It's costly. But again, we can still reduce costs. We can still innovate so that transportation from the farm to the supermarket is lowered. And just as we can reduce losses from waste, and cooling is clearly essential to that. I mean, we need more cold chain. It's expensive, but the returns on investment are clear. If we can provide cooling somewhere near the farms, not at the farm necessarily, but near the farm, and we've got to have cooling even on the downstream side. So not everyone shops at Maxmart or Melcom. Most Ghanaians are shopping in the local markets. And so we need cooling there too, so that when the woman who's selling doesn't sell all of her tomatoes on one day, she can put them in refrigeration and come back and sell them the next day. So this is all key, and investment is key to this, and that's why we're so excited to be able to bring investment that's productive, that results in better incomes. It's not just investment to make money. Yes, I mean, that's an important part of any investment, but the impact side is there as well. And as we invest in cooling, as we invest in irrigation, as we invest in farmers and their seed, we will generate tremendous impact on the economy and on lives and livelihoods. We'll even save lives. I mean, this is not to go too far, but it's not unrealistic to say that with the number of deaths due to malnutrition in West Africa, we can actually save lives, because we're investing in nutrition and well-being, which is a cause of death.
Deep. No, thank you. Um, I think just a moment to take that in, but it's so true. Uh, I've maybe just two more quick questions before we end. And thank you both so much for being so gracious with your time and sharing what you're doing. But coming back to the money with Blackstar and Pangea, kind of where does one end and the other begin, or how does that relationship look like with industry and probably with future deals that I can imagine you'll be doing? I don't know, Tracy, okay, John?
We're very close because it's like a marriage we're in this deal together, and like we said, it's permanent capital. So we're going to be together in this in the long term. But Grant and Blackstar Africa are clearly more the operational partner. We're not the CEO. Grant is the CEO, and we're supporting him. So there are specific things that Pangea is now doing as a shareholder and as a partner. One of them is actually now going out, and we're now raising additional capital to bring into the company to invest in cold chain, invest in farmers and irrigation. So the roles are fairly clear. And Grant and I talked this morning. We talk on a regular basis. Tracy and Grant and Catherine and I talked yesterday. So it's a very close relationship, but the roles are clear. And I think that's always important to have clear roles, clear understanding. It's not easy, but we're going to do this together. And we each have our thesis. We each have our way of doing business. I do look forward to the next deal with Blackstar Africa, but we're also looking forward to doing deals with other partners. And no doubt, there's a lot more to be done. I'll go back to something that David Tete from GHISP always said. The money is actually there. The money needs to find good quality deals, and we believe that as well. We believe that when we have a great deal to be done, we can find the resources. We can't do everything because we have our niches, but we can find resources to do more of these deals. And with Blackstar, we intend to do that.
No, perfect. Then one of my final questions to the both of you. A lot of SMEs talk about raising capital and growing and scaling, but very few actually talk about being acquired. And for the Guinean, the West African, the African founder listening to this call or this conversation right now, what are some tips you would give them to do now is to be attractive in 3 years' time for an acquisition? What should you start doing from Monday next week, and what will they regret not having done if now are looking to seek to be acquired?
I can start. So one of the things that we really want them to focus on is revenue and profit and efficiencies. So how can they improve some of their business efficiency to impact their bottom line in a positive way? Another thing that we really want them to look at is impact. So what is the impact that the company is measuring? So are they creating jobs for youth? Are they creating jobs for women? And when I say creating jobs for women, are they also providing the supporting structures to help those women continue to work? Are they creating efficiencies within their organization? Do they have a sound structure in terms of a board, in terms of governance, so that the company can continue regardless of who is in power? Those are some of the things. John, I'll hand it over to you to add some of the things of your thoughts.
First of all, on the equity side, I think this is a lesson that some SMEs do need to learn and consider. What is the right instrument? What will they need to grow, and what kind of capital will they need? And it's often debt. And in fact, there was a recent article about how much of investment in Africa is debt. It's a large percentage. It's well over 50%. I think approaching 80 or 90%. So debt is definitely an important instrument, but sometimes equity is needed, and they go hand in hand. And so each business would have their own needs to raise equity and debt. It's a conversation we often have with companies to say what kind of capital do you want, and talk about what we think they might need. and often equity should be considered as part of their capital raise. But the thing that I would encourage goes back to advisory services. We believe as advisors that advisory services are very important, that companies often should be focused on running their company well, on the day-to-day business of running the company. And for raising capital, they should seek support. They should seek a good advisor. Pangea is not the only one. There are many others in the ecosystem, and we work with them. I mean, we believe that these actors, in particular the private sector ones, the ones that offer a marketplace for services, are the ones that do the best job because they live and die by it. It's not necessarily the NGOs or the UN programs that are providing quality advisory services. Look for a great advisor who will understand you and work with you. And we have, for example, BASPAG, the Business Advisory Service Providers Association of Ghana, and many advisors that are there. We have Open Capital Advisors with whom Pangea really enjoys working. We have GFA, there's Deal Source Africa. There's so many advisors out there, but find the right advisor who can help you, with whom you trust and with whom you can work well to get to the finish line. And then I'll just add one more thing, which I wanted to say is that the legal components are also important. And I want to give a shout out to Olari Law. There's a need when you do a transaction to have legal advice. And if we talked before about the steps and the milestones, and legal was a big part of it. And Olari Law Firm and Nana Abo Olari was really critical to this transaction. But I think any SME, when they want to get to a deal closure, needs some legal support at some point. And usually the advisory service provider can help them find it. With Pangea, we actually have, just to give a shout out to the West Africa Investment Facilitators Consortium, WAIF, which is an entity that Pangea helped create and has a communications firm, it has a market research firm, it has a data AI firm as a part of it, so that anyone that's being advised by Pangea can tap into this suite of services. But the legal services are particularly important, and Olari Law was really critical in this transaction. So if I have a piece of advice, it's to look for legal advisory services, and hopefully this marketplace will evolve to the point where there is more financing available from the ecosystem, from donors that not just give out grants and programs. I think, many of those don't really serve the end purpose of helping a company grow, but if it's channeled into quality advisory services in the ecosystem, then this will result in more deal flow, it will result in more growth, it will result in more development for Ghana, more jobs, and all the impact that we want to see.
I totally agree. I mean, I sit across various sectors of the entrepreneurship world, and there's always money going directly to the startups, whether it's grants or capital and whatnot. But the people that help them get there, from yourselves, the hubs, are often underserved and underlooked. So I totally agree. No, thank you for that. So from the both of you, in 5 years' time, God willing, Ghanaians in general will be there to cover the headline 5 years on, and we have some nice press release and some nice numbers to share. But what does success look like, almost personally, for you, like also from Pangea's point of view? What is the numbers? What is the one thing that you can look back and say, yes, this has been a successful 5 years? Should we do ladies first?
Sure, I'll start. One thing.
Okay, two.
Okay, fine. I'll do two. I certainly would say profits. How we improve efficiency and create profit to be able to move the company forward. And I would say part of that is efficiency. So profits and efficiency are kind of tied together. And another one I would say is impact. So how we measure this impact by closing the gap that John was speaking about in terms of food security, loss, harvest loss, post-harvest loss. So I would say those are two really big things. In 5 years, we hope to have a strong, successful story of John.
Cost of healthy diet. I want to go back to that as a really important indicator for the world and for Ghanaians and for West Africans. We need to drive down the cost of a healthy diet. We need to make cabbage, carrots, peppers, tomatoes affordable, so accessible to Ghanaian families and their children. Eden Tree will contribute to that. And in 5 years' time, I want to see Eden Tree and its competitors being able to increase yields at the farm gate, improve income for farmers, deliver more lettuce and tomatoes and cabbage to Ghanaian consumers so that they can access it at a good price. I think if we can reduce waste, we can have irrigation and cold chain, we will contribute measurably to the cost of healthy diet. We will see the cost of those vegetables go down for consumers, and they're being consumed more. If they're consumed more, we sell more. So it's good for the marketplace, it's good for consumers. I think Eden Tree is such an exciting deal because of that. I mean, it's more than a deal, it's Ghanaian development, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
So, okay, now we'll come to the last question I want to ask. It's just a very basic one. We've had a great conversation. Thank you for divulging so much, from due diligence to partnerships to the founder story to how you operate. For the companies listening to this, what kind of piece of advice or last closing word would you have to them? To what would you want them to think about, to dwell on as we leave this conversation? Tracy, I'll start with you.
Well, we heard a lot here. There were a lot of good ideas and things flowing, but I'll go back to what John had said about focusing on the business. We certainly want them to focus on their strength and what they're passionate about. But in addition to that, it is important for them to seek advisory services. I think no leader can do it all. Know your specialty, and then rely on help of others that is their specialty, which is helping advise the business and finding access to capital.
No, thank you. John?
Well, every company should seek to grow and grow in a healthy way. Steady, patient growth is attractive to investors. If they want to raise capitals, demonstrating steady growth is the best they can do. I see a lot of entrepreneurs in the ecosystem that spend a lot of time chasing grants. And grants can be useful. There's nothing necessarily wrong with grants, but they can be a distraction. And I see it as a distraction many times when companies, instead of working on steady growth of their company, they chase down grants. And many of the companies that get grants are not attractive because they rely on them. So look less to grants, look more to steady growth, patient capital at the right size. And fortunately, there are instruments, small and large, starting with microfinance, looking to rural banks, looking to non-bank financial institutions like RDF, like Root Capital, like Opportunity International. There are resources available. Look broadly to the kind of resource that you need beyond grants and grow steadily. And each year after year, as you grow, you'll open up other opportunities for investment.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, Tracy. I'm here, Isaac Aqua from the Innovation Spark. Under the Ghana Innovation Journal, we've had Pangea Global Ventures share about their journey from advisory to ownership, working with Blackstar Africa in acquiring the second shares from INP of Eden Tree. Madam Catherine, who's been in the game for over 20 years, now going onto the board. There's so many lessons, so many gems that they shared. I think quietly, if I'm able to summarize the key things or the main things is, make sure if you're looking at acquiring in the future, make sure you're doing the right things now, from structure to governance, but money matters. Make sure you're profitable, make sure your books are in order, make sure you don't have any creative accounting, and keep working on something that you really believe is fundable, and keep the diligence, and you could be acquired. Thank you both for your time and what you do in the ecosystem. I know we're focused here on Eden Tree, but I know you're supporting a lot of SMEs, both here in Ghana and further across the ECOWAS region, and looking to following your story and having more things to share on the Ghana Innovation Journal on your successes. You find us here on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and all our different channels. The Innovation Spark, we're across various social media channels, and Pangea Global Ventures. If you are an SME looking for quality advisory, looking to scale, looking to get to the next level, do not hesitate to reach out. They will pick your calls. They'll tell you why they can't answer if you're not the right shape. And of course, if you're here in Ghana, make sure to buy Eden Tree, product available in supermarkets near you. It's been fantastic. I can't wait to follow the stories. And congratulations once again.
Thank you, Isaac.
Thank you, Isaac.
Great pleasure to chat with you.
Great
Thank you for
conversation.
what you're doing in the ecosystem as well with the Ghana Innovation Journal.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.